Ithaca, New York, a year and a half ago, we were surprised by the abundance of fresh produce, especially in the harsh, long winters of Ithaca. We soon found out that this was enabled by hydroponics, an innovative agricultural method. Although we found most of the crops that we liked, there was something missing, our favorite green, spinach. And we set out on a journey to solve this problem. We are pure spinach, and we sell the best spinach in the world. By the best, we mean a better tasting, more nutritious spinach that is locally grown, available year-round, pesticide-free, and ultra-fresh. So fresh that you can have it on your plate in less than 24 hours after harvest. This is us in our greenhouse in Ithaca. We are currently selling our spinach at 4 retail locations in Ithaca, New York, and we have reached $1,500 in revenue last month. We cannot keep up with demand, and we're at full capacity. We wake up every morning thinking about how we can expand our production so we can get this product in the hands of more consumers. We are experiencing this demand due to a big gap in the market. In the U.S., if you want to buy spinach, you can go to the local farmers market, which is available a few months of the year, and you can buy spinach that is highly inconsistent in quality. Or you can go to the supermarket to buy packaged spinach, which is imported from the West Coast, traveled thousands of miles, and is washed in a chlorine-based solution. The answer to the problem is local hydroponic spinach. And the market we are targeting is huge and growing fast. Total spinach consumption in the US alone has reached over $1.1 billion. And we are going after the $150 million target market of premium packaged spinach. Now you might be wondering why hydroponic spinach does not exist. Hydroponic growers who have had success with other vegetable crops have consistently failed with spinach. That is due to the nature of the crop, which is susceptible to a root disease that kills the plant before maturity and infects the entire greenhouse when grown with conventional hydroponic methods. Us, working with field experts at Cornell University, have developed the right production parameters that enable the risk and disease-free growth of hydroponic baby spinach. We do this by controlling every single piece of equipment in a hydroponic greenhouse through an autonomous controls box. And we encrypt our algorithms that is in the controls box, and we protect all aspects of the hardware as a trade secret. And we sign non-disclosure agreements with all greenhouse staff.
Our methods beat traditional methods across multiple metrics. Compared to traditional field-grown spinach, we have less than half the crop cycle time, use 90% less land and water, yield zero agricultural runoff, and also are able to reduce carbon emissions through our local distribution model. Our product is also nutritionally superior, with higher levels of iron, zinc, and magnesium, and lower levels of sodium. We aim to establish ourselves as the premium brand for local, fresh spinach. Although we're currently the only company that's able to produce spinach hydroponically, we know that competitors will try to replicate our methods. This is why we need to get our product into the hands of our target consumers while we still have first mover advantage. To do this, we need to scale rapidly. We plan to partner with existing hydroponic greenhouses by installing our hardware controls box in their facilities, allowing them to produce spinach hydroponically. We will then purchase the spinach from them at a fixed rate, and through our distributors, sell it to retailers under the Pure Spinach brand. A 4-ounce box will be sold to consumers for $3.99, which is in line with pricing of other boxed organic leafy greens.
And our business model will add value to every single stakeholder involved. Farmers look for the sale of profitable crops at stable prices and secure sales volumes, while retailers are looking for local produce that is locally grown and zero risk of food recall safety. And consumers look for locally grown products that is naturally sourced and transparent. And our business model meets all those needs thanks to our product. And Pure Spinach will have two different revenue streams. The first generated from sales of the produce from our own operated greenhouses. And in that greenhouse, we will grow our spinach, we will conduct R&D to ensure product quality and continued operational efficiency, as well as de-risk our hardware component for our product. The second revenue stream comes from the sales from our partner-owned greenhouses, and every single greenhouse will grow.
Can I ask, it seems that you have almost two businesses going on here. You've got an agro or an agri-technology business which enables the growth of a crop hydroponically that wasn't possible before. But it also strikes me that you're now also trying to build a consumer-facing brand and get this into a variety of retail environments. Can you explain why you've decided to do both at the same time, and the challenges of distributing into, the mass market and building this brand strikes me as quite difficult for a young company.
Yeah. Sure. Our intention is to be a produce marketing and sales company. But we know that our proprietary technology gives us first mover advantage for a temporary period of time. Realistically, we are aware of our competition, their capabilities, and we can see how they may catch up in in the span of 5 years. And our intention by adopting this business model is to scale fast. There is a capacity of hydroponic greenhouses in the U.S., and we want to utilize that by having them grow spinach in partnership with us, and that is what fuels our revenues in the produce marketing side.
But then you see the long-term barrier to entry not being the core technology, but the first mover advantage in building your brand, both as a consumer brand and as a brand for hydroponic growers to adopt when they want to, produce another profitable crop.
Correct.
And how do you? I'm not that familiar with produce purchasing by retailers. How does a store currently buy its fresh produce, and how are you going to move from supplying 4 or 5 retailers directly to actually supplying through what I would imagine is a wholesale network? Or, Publix don't buy directly from producers, right? So what's the current distribution infrastructure for hydroponically grown produce, and how are you going to get in there in a meaningful way?
If I may go back to our business model slide.
I just want to reassure that you're comfortable with the claim you've made that you're the only company that grows hydroponic spinach in the United States.
Correct.
Are you familiar with Deer Valley Produce in Arizona, the largest hydroponic growers in the United States? Have you been there?
No, we haven't been there.
I don't think you should make that claim if you go to their facility. I don't think that's a valid claim. I take exception with that.
We are aware that other hydroponic producers are experimenting with spinach, and we know that there are large hydroponic producers like Bright Farms who have come out with hydroponic spinach products. But they are not long-lived because these root disease issues that hydroponic producers experience with spinach arise eventually, and the products have to be taken off the shelves. And in the last 3 years, we have seen numerous hydroponic producers sort of go through this cycle.
Can I ask, you're presenting a model that's a typical model in, for instance, animal feed. You provide the technology, you provide the feed, you may provide day-old chicks, something like that, and then the farmer raises it and then you buy it back. Is that close to the model of what you're proposing? Something like that? So the question I have is, the first thing, for that model to work, there's got to be a pretty high price of the final product to extract the profit from it, number one. So I want you to tell me about the value or the price of spinach and how that can support that model. The second part is, Can you give me an example of a company that's doing this type of model in the agricultural area, rather than, for instance, I've given you an example of the feedstock for animals?
Can I? Sorry, at least in terms of the pricing, right? The end user will be charged $3.99 for a 4-ounce box. For a 4-ounce box, they will be charged a price tag of $3.99, which is the average median price for the.
I guess I'm thinking about the whole thing, like when someone sets up
Correct.
allocates a greenhouse area to spinach. Is this a high-value product, or is this a low-value product for them for that space?
Compared to greens, spinach is the largest revenue per square foot, and it is 27% more than the other green. I mean, the spinach would retail, the growth is around $80 per square foot, while the next revenue generating is 27% less.
Okay, so let's accept that for a moment. Now, please tell me about a company that's implemented this kind of model, because I'm interested, maybe I want to invest, but I want to see how it's been operated in that industry.
In terms of another farm, to my knowledge, we haven't seen. And the reason this model is working and we believe would work for us is because we've been approached by existing greenhouse operators.
Okay, so that's the problem that I face. As an investor, I'm looking for something to base my comfort. I'm trying to get comfort from this. So the hurdle you got to get over now, from now forward, is how you're going to scale this thing and it's going to work, even though we don't have a model of it working with another company.
Maybe I can go back to build a little bit on what Andrew is saying. You mentioned that you currently, like almost as proof of concept, you currently have $1,900 of revenue per month. Is that correct?
$1,500.
Okay. And you have 4 retailers?
Yeah, we're selling at 4 retail stores.
Right. So that, if my calculations are right, and I gave you 1,900, you sell in each retailer, you sell for $16 per day, which is 4 boxes a day. How much? Can you explain to me how much proof of concept is that really? It's $16, and also building on that, I can see that if I then add that up, that means that if you if you continue as you're doing now, you will sell for $22,000 in a year. Could you go back to the slide where you say how much you actually project in the first year? Okay, so around 300,000, right? From what seems to be a trajectory of around 20,000.
And the reason is we understand.
That's a real ramp up.
Yes. But the reason is because we wanted to proceed for the next one. It was for the use of funds, since the greenhouse we're currently in will definitely not meet the demand. It was a place where we're doing our proof of concept and seeing
Yes.
the consumer and retailer and farmer feedback.
I kind of buy that, actually, but 1 year?
I mean, in terms of, we were expecting when we raise our funds with around 3 to 4 months of construction. And since we've already been developing relationships with the retailers, so as soon, I mean, if I can just give an anecdotal story, for example, based on where we are currently. So last year, we walked with the first batch that we were doing, and we went to one of the largest online retailers in New York City. We walked in and we told them this is something that is grown in New York City, in Ithaca. They were confused that you can grow winter-grown spinach at this time of year. We're like, yes, please sample it. And this is the produce buyer. As soon as he sampled it, he's like, I can give you exclusivity with an SKU right now because we do not get the fresh local spinach grown. So in the sense of us having that forecasted as an assumption for us, that played a very big role. When I'm walking in before we even had a brand or a name, Pure Spinach, or being incorporated, when we're walking in with a bag of produce for them to sample that is unbranded, and they were willing to, at least it's a verbal.
So why don't you just become farmers? Let's just scale this right now. Cut out all this complication, and let's just expand right now into the main markets and make money from it, improve it, and do it right there.
This is something which as well, we started off thinking, and we saw this business model for us. We're like, why don't we be greenhouse operators for ourselves? But then when we realized that it's so asset heavy and capital expenditure we'll need to put for every single greenhouse, if we can have our own operated greenhouse where we conduct our R&D.
Yeah, but this is the source of the possible weakness of this idea. Because just because something's asset heavy, you can't then make it asset light. Somebody has to buy the asset and pay for it, whether they finance it or not. So if the asset requirements are high, just because you say, well, we're not buying the asset, doesn't mean that it's a profitable business. So what I really want to hear you say is, we want to add 10 of these things now to make profit from them. But you're not saying that. And that makes me wonder, when you go to the growers and you say, hey, forget about lettuce and forget about carrots, you need to allocate space to spinach. And they go, no, it's asset heavy and I'm not getting enough revenue out of it. I want you to tell me how you're a millionaire from opening 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 of these things, football size.
Yeah. Like I said before, we right now have a first mover's advantage, and we want to make use of that as much as possible to penetrate the market in the next 5 years. And when we run the calculations and look at the differential between if we own greenhouses and keep getting funded and keep getting financing, the scale we can reach, and the scale we can reach by utilizing the existing hydroponic greenhouse infrastructure in the U.S. There are 567 greenhouses.
I understand that, but what I'm trying to get at is, for instance, what I want to understand is if I invest 100 in assets, in setting this all up, and we generate revenue each year out of this greenhouse that we do, how much profit are we going to make from that 100? What % return are we going to make?
From that, it would be around, in full capacity, 11%.
Okay, so there's the problem. If you had told me 30% or 40%, I would have thought that's great. But 11%, all you're trying to do now is shift the asset costs to somebody else for what I would call a low yield. Do you know the return in the U.S. stock market over the last 70 years is 10%? I can just take my money and put it in the stock market and get 10%. You're telling me that asset investment gives you a 11%?
10% minus all the volatility movement in between.
No, sorry. I can tell you that if I'm a long-term holder in the stock market, I can get 10% and I don't care about the volatility. And I don't have to do anything. You're going to have to run this thing. If you don't have a profitable model that you can show us right now that you're going to want to expand, how are you going to convince other people to allocate the space that they have? I think you should go into marijuana. That's a really profitable run, right? And that's expanding, right? Because the model is very profitable.
Have you considered licensing to existing gigantic hydroponic operations?
Yes, we have considered it.
And what was the negative with doing that?
Licensing a hardware product yielded significantly less revenue and profits than actually acquiring the value of all the produce grown with this technology. This is novel, and it's a special product, and people are willing to pay premium for it, as we are seeing with our pilot production right now, and as we're seeing through our consumer research. And we believe that the value that we're creating can be shared up the value chain. And it is enough for us to make a margin, make this into a profitable business, and also share that extra value with existing greenhouse owners.
Okay, I got an opportunity for you. I'm going to help you here. Ready?
Ready.
Okay. So when you said 11%, we talked about the asset. Let's say that we finance that asset 50% from bank loans, and we can get a low rate because it's food related and whatever. So we get the money at half the price. So all of a sudden, our cost of funds is not our cost of funds is lower. We can get a lower cost of funds, and all of a sudden, that 11% return could turn into an equity return. That's what I'm putting in, right? An equity return, let's say, of 15 or 20%. Fantastic, right? That's not bad. That's getting better. So now, I ask you, I would be interested in investing in this if you tell me that you would like to expand to, let's say, 10 yourself first, then move on to the rest of the U.S.
If I can at least answer this part of it, the drive that we have to actually get this produce out there is our primary goal. I mean, considering with the information that we have available, and again, from us going out to meet with the farmers, with the retailers, and seeing how quickly we can do it, with our limitations, this is why we thought that could be the quickest model for us to start doing it. And if there is an opportunity, an option where we can scale up even quicker and get the product even quicker into the hands of the consumer and the retailers, in order to fulfill our goal, we would do that and we would consider it.
Then your final product will be sold under your brand, right?
Correct.
And from second year onwards, more than half of the quantity that will be sold under your brand would be under the hands of someone else, correct?
Correct.
So could you explain to me, or at least convince me, how will you be able to control all the aspects of your brand? Because when there's a problem with retailer would not have a problem with each of the contract farmer, right? They will have a problem with you, your company, your firm, your brand, and you will be in ruin. So explain to me, how would the quality control be, and how will you be guarantee, the smooth operation over the long-term period?
Yeah, so that is something we've given a lot of thought to, because our brand is, especially as we're entering the market, like a very valuable thing to our product. So we have several measures that are in place to ensure that quality standards are met by all of our suppliers, and that they're not cutting corners when they're producing the product. The first is the controls box itself. Although it was primarily developed to protect the technology, it also does control a large percentage of the actual parameters required to grow the spinach. That being said, though, there still are other physical manual components that the greenhouse partners will have to carry out themselves. So something that we want to add to our sales agreements with them is the right for us to visit their facilities and conduct audits to make sure that the growing conditions are up to our standards, the processes are being followed. And then a third thing is we have requested that, well, we will request that any batch that they produce, they will have to sell us, send us a certain amount so that we can inspect it, again, to make sure it's up to our quality standards. And if for some reason it's not, we'll know early enough to contact the retailers and have them pull it from the shelves before it gets into the hands of too many consumers.
I understand the way, let's assume that you can achieve your goal of sort of networking your production through your relationship with other greenhouse operators. I'd like to come back to the sales and marketing initiatives. Who's ultimately going to be responsible then for actually making the sales to local retailers? And I'm not sure that my question was ever answered, how those retailers currently buy and how you see them buying under this new sort of distributed production methodology.
First, let me answer your second question because it wasn't answered before. Retailers currently buy through brokers and distributors. And although it varies slightly from retailer to retailer, the ones that we are initially targeting, we are distributing to them through distribution partners, and they are getting a margin off of the product. So it's from us or our partner farm to the distributor and then to the retailer.
So
Does that answer you?
Yeah, so there are already effectively wholesalers who are aggregating produce and then distributing it into the retail environment.
Correct, but in our case, we have the relationship with the retailers and we know what locations will carry our product. So it is a logistics service, more than wholesales that we're getting from the distributors, and we're giving them a cut of the product revenue.
Okay.
Based on your, let's say, 5-year projections, how many retailer groups you plan to be working with?
We are initially targeting 4 retailers, and we have been in contact with all of them. And the reason we chose them is because they resonate with our target consumers. They are growing health food retailers in the U.S.
Let's say Whole Food. In your year 5 revenue, how many % of Whole Food you plan to distribute your product to?
The question is among all retailers, how much
Among
Whole
all the
Foods-
locations of the Whole Food, including the digital channel, what is your penetration into Whole Food network in your year 5 forecast?
That is not something we forecasted because we do not see that as something we can project today. How much weight we can allocate to one retailer as opposed to all of the retailers.
Okay,
that
the reason
we
I
are
asked
doing
that is
work
that
with.
if I'm Whole Food and I'm dealing with a young promising company, and then after 1 hour of my discussion, I have a glimpse that this guy won't be able to supply me a constant volume of supply to all the location I need, then I probably wouldn't want to deal with them in the first place. Because then it would create my operation hectic. Like a consumer who used to buy this product in A location of Whole Food, when he comes to my C location of Whole Food, then he can't find this, then he's gonna be very upset and then complain back to me, and then I will run into a total nightmare. So will be more willing to work with someone who can actually support me. So if you haven't given me a thought, if you haven't given a thought on that, then I'm quite afraid that you won't be able to. You might get into a meeting with them, but to have them actually placing an order for you might be a different story, though.
Let me give you an example from our conversations with these retailers. These 4 that we've chosen as our initial sales channels are retailers that are comfortable working with local producers, especially in fresh produce. So they not only accept but also appreciate that we are only in a certain location and we can supply to, a certain number of their locations.
I think that's you're missing my point. Right now, yes, they see you as a local producer, correct? Because you're based in one location. But I'm asking, when you are positioning yourself as a brand, a standardized brand, maybe an East Coast brand, or maybe like half a country brand, something like that. The expectation from the retailer would be consistency, the ability to provide certain amount of the service level to their product requirement. And if you didn't have a plan, or you can't ensure to them that to what extent of the consistency you'll be able to commit, then I'm afraid the deal not going to happen, though. So how would you plan to, let's say I'm Whole Food, convince me that how you are planning to provide a constant supply over the long period of time in all the locations that they need.
We see consistency is volume as one of our main strengths when it comes to retailers. Because we grow hydroponically and we grow with the latest technology, we know that every single week we can deliver the same volume of produce.
So come back to my earlier question. See, if you haven't, let's say if you want to service 70% of Whole Food locations, how many contract farmers will you be needing?
More than we project to be partnering with. Our plan is to be in 16 cities in the U.S. At the end of the next 5 years. And these cities are chosen because of their potential of carrying our target consumer. So we would like to be in the Whole Foods locations in these cities, but not outside, because part of our brand value proposition is it's local where it is, but it's never imported.
But you do see that there is a fundamental sort of philosophical inconsistency with trying to build a national brand based on a concept of locally sourced and grown. I think both in terms of your marketing strategy and also in terms of how this works in terms of distribution. The large retailers, correct me if I'm wrong, tend to buy national products that are rolled out across their entire store chain from very large companies that can guarantee consistency, and they buy their locally grown produce from local manufacturers where if they need to switch them out, they can switch them out. You're trying to combine these two things into one animal, which I think has some complexities involved with it.
Honestly, I don't see the complexity in it because to us it's very simple. We are the local producer that they...
I'm afraid
to discuss further after this. Okay. Thank you, Team Pure Spinach from Cornell University, United States of America.